We begin with a simple confusion that quietly shapes entire lives. The body surges and the mind calls it love. A flash of thrill, a spike of pulse, the air around us thickens with possibility, and we name it meaning. We mistake intensity for intimacy, and the paradox unfolds. Why does danger feel like desire? Because the nervous system speaks an older language than our reasoning. It was written long before we learned poetry and promises. It knows cliffs and storms and sudden change. It rewards us for noticing power. And sometimes it whispers, this is aliveness. The attraction paradox is not that we prefer harm, it is that arousal feels like depth. A pounding heart adds color to a moment, and the mind paints a story to justify the color. We do not merely want safety, we want to feel awake. In evolutionary terms, organisms that track novelty and threat survive to pass on their curiosity. The circuits that flag danger overlap with the ones that tag rewards. The amygdala raises the alarm. The ventral striatum brightens at possibility. The cocktail tastes like significance. So we find ourselves pulled by people who carry weather with them, unpredictable, electric, a little unsafe. Against them, steadiness can feel like a grayscale afternoon. Yet steadiness is not emptiness. It is the canvas on which real connection is painted. The problem is that chaos is louder than care. Intermittent reinforcement, now warm, now cold, teaches the brain to chase the next high. Each scarce affection becomes a jackpot to be won. The loop writes itself. Cue, craving, pursuit, spike, crash, repeat. The soul mistakes the cycle for destiny. Arousal misattribution sharpens the trap. A racing heart on a shaky bridge is easily projected onto whoever stands beside us. We feel alive and assign the cause to their presence. In love, we then chase contexts that produce the same physiological drama. We confuse adrenaline for attachment. The brain says, something important is happening. The story says, it must be this person. It rarely adds, or maybe it is the storm. Philosophically, Nietzsche named the twin pulls within us, the Apollonian hunger for form and clarity, and the Dionysian hunger for ecstasy and risk. We need both. Life without the Apollonian turns to chaos. Life without the Dionysian dries into a museum of routines. But when the Dionysian arrives in another person as volatility, we are tempted to equate their unpredictability with vitality itself. Mystery becomes a proxy for meaning. Danger becomes a mirror in which we see the possibility of a fuller self. Psychologically, attraction and attachment are not the same system. Attraction is fast, instinctive, sometimes unruly. Attachment is slow, earned, repeatedly confirmed. Many good men and good women appeal to our attachment system, trustworthy, present, consistent, while leaving our attraction system understimulated. Meanwhile, the bad boy or unavailable girl lights up novelty, dominance, and uncertainty. Ancient cues the brain once used to track power and access. The heart races, the mind writes poetry. We call it chemistry. But chemistry is not character. Intensity is not intimacy. If we do not understand this, we will keep mistaking violent weather for a beautiful climate. We will heave ourselves from storm to storm, confusing exhaustion with devotion. Trauma bonds grow in such climates. Intermittent tenderness, unpredictable withdrawal, a promise just often enough to keep hope solvent. The bond feels deep because we have suffered for it. Yet suffering is not proof of love, it is proof of friction. What then is freedom? Not the rejection of aliveness, but its relocation. We learn to generate vitality without outsourcing it to chaos. We name the signals accurately. My heart is racing because the situation is intense, not because this person is my fate. We practice breath until the body remembers baseline. We add meaning through clarity, not mystery alone. We ask, does their presence expand my future? Do my values grow taller here? Does my nervous system relax when commitment is spoken aloud? This is not an argument against desire. It is an invitation to refine it. To feel fully is human. To confuse feeling with truth is costly. Real intimacy has a quieter voltage. It glows instead of flashing. It deepens through reliability, candor, and the courage to express desire without games. It offers steady novelty, two people willing to keep discovering one another in daylight. The Dionysian is welcomed, but not weaponized. The spark of danger taught us to survive. The spark of wisdom teaches us to choose. Between the siren of intensity and the harbor of intimacy, we can learn to steer by a different star, a liveness that does not demand self-betrayal. When unstable love knocks, we may still feel the old rush. Of course we will. But we can greet it with a bow rather than a vow. We can say, I recognize you. Thank you for the lesson. I will find my aliveness without the storm. The human brain is not built to love. It is built to learn. And what it learns most quickly is reward. Deep within the folds of gray matter lies a small network, the dopamine pathway, that fires when something unexpectedly good happens. It does not deliver happiness. It delivers anticipation. The promise, not the presence, of pleasure. That's why our hearts race before the kiss, not during it. Dopamine is the language of pursuit. This chemical script was perfect for survival. A hunter needed motivation to chase uncertain prey. A gatherer needed curiosity to explore new terrain. Unpredictable rewards kept our ancestors alive. But the same circuitry now meets modern love, social media, and emotional unpredictability, and cannot tell the difference between danger and desire. The old wiring interprets volatility as vitality. Intermittent affection becomes the most potent drug. When someone gives attention inconsistently, hot, cold, absent, then suddenly intimate, the brain interprets it as a variable reward. Like a slot machine, each pull might deliver gold. The uncertainty multiplies the dopamine surge. This is why we remember the one who disappeared more than the one who stayed. The brain marks loss as significance. We call it chemistry, but chemistry is only physics with poetry added. In behavioral psychology, this is called intermittent reinforcement. Rewards delivered unpredictably strengthen behavior more than those delivered consistently. The same principle that makes gambling addictive can make unstable relationships magnetic. Each unpredictable text, each dramatic argument followed by reconciliation, each withdrawal followed by a sudden confession, all these patterns carve grooves in the brain, and the dopamine loop spins like a carousel. We start to crave not the person, but the spike. The loop teaches us to associate chaos with connection. Every time the rush fades, the crash feels unbearable, so we chase another high. The tragedy is that the loop never leads to fulfillment. It only sustains motion. The wanting system overwhelms the liking system. We end up wanting without enjoying, running without arriving. Neuroscientists call this the reward prediction error. When outcomes differ from expectation, especially in surprising ways, dopamine spikes. It is less about pleasure and more about learning what might happen next. The lover who remains mysterious keeps our brain on edge, and we mistake vigilance for passion. We become addicted to uncertainty because it keeps the reward system guessing. But pleasure and peace are not the same. Peace is steady, dopamine neutral, too quiet to compete with fireworks. The nervous system that thrives on novelty becomes restless in calmness. To many, genuine stability feels like withdrawal, not healing. This is why leaving chaos can feel boring at first. The body is detoxing from adrenaline. We say, I miss the spark, and when we really mean, my nervous system misses the surge. Yet awareness is the antidote. When we learn to separate stimulation from satisfaction, the trap weakens. We can still feel excitement, but we stop worshiping it. The chase becomes a choice, not a compulsion. The more we recognize the pattern, the less it owns us. We start noticing that the dopamine spike is only a signal, not a soulmate. The brain whispers, there might be a reward here. The wise heart replies, not this kind. Modern life intensifies the trap. Each notification, each like, each short burst of digital attention mimics the same variable reinforcement schedule. Love and technology now share the same architecture of addiction. We check, we refresh, we scroll, hoping the next hit restores the missing aliveness. But the more we chase, the emptier the baseline becomes. Dopamine teaches pursuit, not peace. Breaking the loop requires boredom, the willingness to sit inside the flat line and feel what remains when the noise stops. It requires replacing the thrill of the chase with the grace of presence. When we learn to stay still, the nervous system recalibrates. The breath becomes enough. The heartbeat returns to its natural rhythm. The aliveness we sought in chaos is discovered again in calm. We do not have to demonize dopamine. It is a messenger, not a monster. It tells us what excites us. We must decide what fulfills us. Desire is sacred when directed consciously. It becomes destructive when confused with survival. The same chemical that once saved us can enslave us unless guided by awareness. In the end, liberation is not about quitting desire. It is about understanding its loops. When we stop confusing excitement with depth, when we honor calm as a form of pleasure, we begin to love differently. The dopamine trap loses its power when we no longer equate craving with connection. Excitement can accompany love, but it should not replace it. Fulfillment is the quiet joy that remains when the roller coaster ends, and we realize that peace was never the absence of thrill, but the presence of understanding. We live in a culture that confuses emotional turbulence with emotional truth. If something shakes us, we assume it must be real. The deeper we sink into uncertainty, the more profound it feels. This is the illusion of depth, the mind's trick that equates confusion with complexity. Yet the most chaotic waves are often only reflections of the self, magnified through projection. When we meet someone who evokes strong emotion, we rarely see them as they are. We see them through the architecture of our own longing. Our nervous system projects unfinished stories onto their outline. The safety we missed, the danger we learned to crave, the fantasy of being finally understood. The other person becomes a mirror, not of who they are, but of who we hope to become in their presence. What we call connection is often resonance between wounds. Psychology names this process projection. The brain stitches old emotions into new experiences, creating continuity where none exists. The familiarity of chaos feels intimate because it resembles our past. We mistake repetition for recognition. We call the echo love. It is not false. It is simply unexamined. We do not fall for people. We fall for the versions of ourselves they awaken. In the early stages of attraction, intensity masquerades as insight. Someone looks at us with a certain curiosity, and our imagination fills in the rest. The relationship feels deep, not because we know them, but because we feel known. The illusion is powerful, a fantasy that seems to reach our core, but is only our reflection seen through another's eyes. This is why sudden closeness often fades into disappointment. The fantasy collapses under the weight of reality. Neuroscience and philosophy meet here. The brain, ever economical, prefers patterns it recognizes, even painful ones, because they are predictable. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar calm. So we return to what we know, instability that mirrors our earliest emotional climates. Attachment theory calls this reenactment. We bond through what once hurt us, hoping this time it will heal differently. It rarely does. The illusion of depth thrives on this hope. We believe chaos reveals truth because calm feels empty. We equate struggle with significance. When love feels effortless, we suspect it lacks meaning. Yet real depth is not born of conflict, but of clarity. It arises when we stop performing the past. It grows when presence replaces projection. Trauma bonding deepens the illusion. Intermittent affection builds intensity, which we then label as importance. The scarcity of warmth turns it into gold. When love becomes a scarce resource, the smallest gesture feels profound. The relationship feels deep because it costs us peace. But true depth does not require suffering as proof. To break this illusion, we must look directly into the mirror and admit what we see, our longing to be seen. The pain of being misunderstood fuels our hunger for resonance. But the moment we recognize this pattern, the mirror changes. We no longer chase storms for validation. We begin to understand that peace is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of distortion. Still waters are not shallow. They are simply undisturbed. Calm love has depth precisely because it does not rely on turbulence to prove itself. It allows both people to remain whole within connection. It does not demand sacrifice for attention. It asks not, how much can you endure for me? But how much truth can we hold together? To experience genuine depth, we must first find it within ourselves. Otherwise, we will forever mistake emotional chaos for passion. The illusion dissolves when we realize that clarity feels less like falling and more like standing upright. That silence between two people can be as intimate as the loudest confession. That stability can feel strange only because we've been trained to associate love with struggle. Philosophically, this realization echoes through every existential teaching. The self we seek in another must first be met within. Otherwise, we will continue to reenact old dramas, calling them destiny. We will confuse mirrors for windows and storms for oceans. Awareness transforms projection into perception. When we finally see clearly, love deepens, not through intensity, but through understanding. The illusion of depth fades not because feeling disappears, but because it becomes integrated. Passion still exists, but it no longer blinds us. Desire remains, but it bows to truth. What was once a spiral of confusion becomes a steady orbit around authenticity. And in that quiet gravity, we discover what intimacy truly means. Two people who no longer need to drown to feel deep. Desire, when unconscious, binds us. It tells us, I will be whole when I have this. It seduces with the illusion of completion, whispering that fulfillment lives outside of us. Yet every pursuit born of emptiness circles back to itself. The more we chase, the more the horizon retreats. To be free from desire is not to reject it, but to see it clearly. To love consciously is to love without clinging. Freedom does not mean detachment from feeling. It means intimacy with awareness. We can hold longing gently without turning it into a cage. We can want deeply without losing ourselves in the wanting. The paradox is that the moment we stop demanding permanence, we begin to experience presence. Love expands not by possession, but by permission. In the nervous system, this shift is quiet but profound. The body no longer surges for validation. It steadies into rhythm. The brain's reward loops calm as safety returns. Dopamine still fires, but in harmony with serotonin, oxytocin, and trust. The chemistry of chaos gives way to the biology of balance. Pleasure ceases to be pursuit and becomes participation. This is the freedom beyond desire. When the thrill is replaced by peace and peace no longer feels boring. In philosophy, this is the movement from craving to creation. Nietzsche's challenge, to become the author of our own instincts, meets the Buddhist insight of non-attachment. We no longer oscillate between craving and aversion. We act, we love, we feel, yet we remain grounded. The storm still passes overhead, but it no longer defines the sky. To live this way is not withdrawal, it is mastery. The mind once believed that to love deeply, one must lose oneself. But self-loss is not depth, it is absence. True depth includes awareness of both self and other. To say, I see you without needing to own you, is the highest form of intimacy. In this space, attraction evolves. Desire is no longer a plea for completion. It becomes a song of shared vitality. It says, I want to experience life with you, not escape it through you. Psychologically, this is integration. The attachment system and the attraction system cease their tug of war. They work together, allowing connection that is both alive and stable. You feel energy without chaos, curiosity without fear. The nervous system no longer interprets calm as danger. It learns that stillness can be safe, even exhilarating. Awareness reprograms biology. Freedom, then, is not the end of desire, it's the end of confusion. You can want, but without believing that having equals being. You can love, without believing that love must hurt to be real. This shift transforms relationships. Instead of seeking intensity, you begin to seek clarity. Instead of chasing unpredictable highs, you cultivate sustainable warmth. You begin to understand that attraction does not require chaos. It requires aliveness, and aliveness can be peaceful. Spiritually, this is surrender, not defeat, but alignment. When the ego stops wrestling with what it cannot control, energy once wasted on craving flows into creation. You love people for who they are, not for the roles they play in your unfinished story. You stop trying to extract healing from others and begin offering it through presence. The self that once needed saving becomes the self that can hold space. And yet freedom does not erase emotion, it refines it. You still feel the pull of beauty, the ache of longing, the tremor of loss, but you experience them without drowning. You realize that love's power was never in possession, it was in perception. When you love consciously, every heartbeat becomes an act of awareness. Every breath, a reminder that life's intensity need not destroy to be real. This is the liberation on the far side of the paradox. The attraction that once enslaved becomes the teacher of truth. The same fire that burned you now warms your home. The same hunger that tormented you becomes creativity. In understanding desire, you transcend it, not by rising above it, but by dwelling within it consciously. You no longer run from the storm or toward it. You walk within it, unafraid. Freedom beyond desire is not a destination. It is a state of presence, repeated moment to moment. It is the capacity to want without worship, to love without losing awareness, to feel without fear. It is discovering that peace and passion are not opposites but partners. It is realizing that the ultimate intimacy is not between two bodies, but between awareness and life itself. So when danger feels like desire again, as it inevitably will, you can smile. You can feel the pulse of adrenaline, the thrill of uncertainty, and still remain still inside. You will know this is aliveness, not addiction. You will see the paradox, not be consumed by it. And in that awareness, you will taste the purest freedom, where love is not a chase, but a presence that neither clings nor fades. The freedom beyond desire is not to stop feeling, but to finally feel everything without being trapped by it.